Good morning, everyone. This is Russell Rucker, and I'm here for another constitutional talk. And today I thought we'd get into Jefferson. We had been recently talking about Adams and his presidency and how he and Jefferson really, their careers were kind of on a parallel of sorts. Thomas Jefferson was born on April 13th, 1743, and he died July 4th, 1826. Ironically, the exact same day that Adams passed away. He had served as a delegate to the House of Burgess, and the House of Burgess was in Virginia. Uh, the king was not happy with what they were doing in the House of Burgess, and he ordered the House of Burgess closed. He called for a boycott of British goods following the Intolerable Acts. Jefferson was a radical like the rest of these guys, and they were fighting taxation. First, the Stamp Act, and then the tea, and all the things that went along, and the Intolerable Acts was all part of that. He was elected to the Second Continental Congress. Now, you have to understand when you're talking about the Continental Congresses, the First Continental Congress was there for a few months, and they agreed to meet again for the second. And the colonies were removing people that were opposed to the Declaration and replacing them with people that were more pro independence. And Jefferson was one of these replacements. Okay. Now, he also served in Congress of the Confederation after the Declaration of Independence. What's interesting is if you go up to Monticello and you see his grave there in the graveyard, it doesn't mention him being president, but it does mention the Declaration of Independence, and it mentions his work on the University of Virginia, I believe it is. And so it shows you what his real objectives were, and what he really was trying to achieve. Uh, Adams and Franklin were working on they were working on the Treaty of Paris following hostilities with England, and Jefferson was invited to go over there, and he declined because he was serving as the governor of Virginia at the time. But as a member of the Congress of the Confederation, when that treaty came back, he pushed to get that treaty approved. Now, once Washington was president, he served in the administration there, and he resigned over numerous battles with Hamilton that he was fighting. He was a vicious partisan. It's just the truth of the matter. And he resigned, and he formed the Republican Party to run against him. And in the next election, Adams was elected, and Jefferson was elected as vice president. So they served together for a time. Although Jefferson was opposed to Adams because Adams was a Federalist, and Jefferson was the founder of the Republican Party. So there were hostilities within the administration, and when the Alien and Sedition Acts passed, which I mentioned when we were discussing Adams earlier, you know, Jefferson was not happy with these acts, and he helped write the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions with Madison, where they were basically trying to get rid of those acts. But once the following election occurred and he became president, then he was able to remove these acts. Um, he also tried to get rid of a number of judges. He tried to impeach a number of them. He even closed one of the what we would call an inferior court in order to get rid of these judges. Madison was serving in his cabinet, and there was a Supreme Court decision, Madison versus Marbury. Marbury was a judge who was late appointed, and he refused to place him. Madison did, and so he sued. And this is where we get judicial review from. So they were they were the judges of the Supreme Court were looking over this case, and they agreed that he should have been placed, but they didn't order the administration to do so. And so he never served. Marbury didn't. But this is where we get judicial review from. So when you're talking about the Alien and Sedition Act, and you're talking about the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions, they couldn't just sue to the Supreme Court like you would today, because they didn't have judicial review until that occurred. We also have a couple other things to talk about with Jefferson's administration. One is the Vice President Aaron Burr, and the shooting of Hamilton. The duel, the biggest duel in our history, really, where he killed him, and he fled down to North Carolina to go in hiding. And I did cover this under the dueling video we did probably 5 or 6 months ago. But when you look through the messages and papers of the president, you'll also find this other conspiracy. This what's known as the Aaron Burr conspiracy, and he was trying to take over either a section of the United States or a section of what was then Mexico for his own country. But they just weren't able to figure out which one of these things he was doing. So there was that problem. The other thing that Jefferson really did for us, the other really great thing, was in the purchase of the Louisiana Purchase, which more than doubled the size of our country. So that's an important event. But nothing really as important as the Declaration of Independence, which it is stated. He does get the recognition for writing the Declaration of Independence. Of course, the preamble to the Declaration, I should say, was penned by I believe it was Franklin at the time. And so they were working together. Adams, Jefferson, Livingston, Franklin. There were 5 of them on the committee of 5, and they worked on the Declaration to get it approved and get the best language they could get. And so he was very instrumental in that. Once he was elected, there was a lot of criticism of him, even from the opening speech, because he was such a partisan. And there was a lot of pent up anger in the country over his election, especially from the other party. In fact, I do have a lengthy um, open letter from Jefferson. I'm not going to, I mean, to Jefferson, President Jefferson, attacking him for his speech, the "We are Federalists, we are Republican" speeches, as if we're all united, because he had done everything he could to divide to win. And once he had the presidency, it was his job to try to bring the country together. And these people that he had disparaged during the campaign just weren't willing to go along. Um, this really is the beginning of our two-party system. This feud that Jefferson seemed to have, first with Hamilton, then with Adams, and I went through the letter that Adams had written Jefferson about the Alien and Sedition Acts, defending his position at the time. Um, in the video on Adams, and there was a lot of back and forth. Really, they met each other when they served together in the Continental Congress, and they got along remarkably well, and they served together very well. But as time went on, and your general power struggle that does occur, it caused an immense rift. So much so there were no letters written. There's a lull of time of quite a few years, all the while Jefferson was president, where they weren't writing each other. And the big problem was with this ongoing feud that Jefferson seemed to have with him. But these are things of government. And Jefferson did do us a tremendous good, especially with the Declaration and with the Louisiana Purchase. If you visit his home today, there's a map on his skin of the country with the Louisiana Purchase as he purchased. It's an interesting map that he was given on animal leather, and it hangs there in his entrance. His home is an incredible thing. Monticello is its name, and it sits up on top of a mountain in Western Virginia. It's a beautiful home, very modern by today's standing, a domed home, and it's an exceptional place with beautiful gardens and with insight of James Monroe's home, even on a clear day. Those two and Madison all lived within close proximity to each other, and for 24 years, those three held the presidency, each serving 2 terms. So it's kind of an interesting situation if you're ever out that way. But I thought I'd explain what was going on and conflict, why Jefferson was not at the Constitutional Convention because he was serving as a diplomat to France at the time. He came back and while visiting Mount Vernon, Washington's home, and he complained about certain things in the Constitution. One of his big complaints was the equality of the Senate. And he told Washington, oh, how could you approve such a thing? And what is the purpose for it? And he mentioned his tea, and he said, what's the saucer for? And he said, well, it's to cool it. And he said, well, that's what the Senate is for. It's the hot-headedness of the House, which can be elected in a single term. All legislation will have to make it through the Senate, and it will have to go through kind of a cooling off period. So legislation that's hot will have to get through a group that takes 6 years to overturn instead of the two. So it's kind of a cooling off kind of thing. And this is an important um, confrontation between the two men, which explains their philosophy a little bit. With that, I'd like to let you go for today and think about what each of these men, what each of them brought, and how important each and every one was to setting up our government and getting it running on a smooth basis. That's what's really important, is our republic. And freedom is not free. It's important to understand what each president had to do in unison to make this country survive as long as it has, this great republic of ours. I'll catch you next time on the next Constitutional Talk. You have a good day now.